Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on the Penguin Palace Stamps YouTube channel. Today I am sharing how to make this fun, bold rainbow card using their new Stencils 360 along with the Origami Shuriken Stencil and a number of different distress oxide inks with that beautiful standout sentiment in the middle with one of their new die cuts. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm starting with Stencils 360 like I mentioned, and this is the Stencils 360 base, which is just taped down to my work surface, and it's that square piece of plastic with the circular sort of markings around it. I put in the paper positioner, which is a clear piece of plastic with an opening that is just big enough for a piece of paper. They come in a number of sizes, so you can use different sizes of paper. And today I'm using a 3 3/4 by 5 inch piece, which I just put right into the middle of that 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch paper positioner, which is a slightly larger opening than my piece of paper, but I just made sure to really put my paper in the middle of the opening and it should work out just fine. Next I'm putting in the stencil positioner, or the stencil guide ring, and this is a 6 inch guide ring and it slides right into the Stencils 360 base, and then my stencil can slide right into that as well. And I just taped down that guide ring to make sure it doesn't move around. And the guide rings also come in a number of sizes because there's a number of different sizes of stencils. So you can just use whichever size guide ring fits whichever size stencil that you plan to use. So the stencil that I'm using, as I mentioned, is the Origami Shuriken Stencil, which has this really cool sort of lightning bolt-esque pattern, and it's duplicated, so there's one on the top and one on the bottom. I lined up the stencil in the guide ring with a little square notch, as you can see, sort of facing up towards the top. And then I'm rotating the stencil for each sort of different inking rotation based on that square. So as you can see, around the Stencils 360 base, there's a number of different shapes along the notches. So those just indicate which rotations you should use for which stencil. And if the stencil has a square notch, it means that you should use these square markings on the Stencils 360 base as you rotate your stencil around. So basically you just rotate your stencil along the notches that are marked by squares. So as I do this, I'm just continuing to rotate my stencil one by one for each different inking, and I'm just going to each square of the Stencils 360 base. And for each sort of rotation, I'm using a different color of the rainbow, and I'm just going along. So I started with red, then orange, and now I'm on kind of mixing orange into yellow. And what I'm doing is for each rotation, I'm doing one solid color. So I started with solid red, and then the next rotation was a mix, so red mixed with orange. And then the next one is back to solid, so solid orange, and then the next one was orange mixed with yellow. Then the next one is solid yellow, and so on. So it's sort of solid, and then a mix, and then solid, and then a mix. And this way you get the kind of gradual transition of color all along the rainbow. And there was just enough rotations that it worked. So by the time I got back to the end, I was mixing back into the red, which is what I had started with. And as you can see, I'm sort of blending and then wiping the stencil in between so that I'm not mixing too much of the inks together. So I'm just taking my microfiber cloth and just sort of wiping the excess ink off the stencil. I'm not using water or anything, I'm just sort of wiping dry. And it's just enough to kind of get that excess ink off so it's not like really mixing too much with the colors that you don't want to mix with. So that's good enough to kind of continue along with this rainbow pattern. So here I am finishing up that final inking where I mentioned the purple kind of blends in with the red, and there it is. That is the pattern that you get, and I love sort of that bold rainbow blend that you get, and it's so easy to do with this system. So off camera, I went ahead and prepared some other pieces to finish the card. I used this You Are My Inspiration die cut, which comes with the word die cut as well as the shadow die cut. I cut the words out of a beautiful silver holographic cardstock for some extra shine, and I cut the shadow out of some white cardstock just to kind of give it that backing and give it that pop that it needs to pop out from the rainbow pattern. I took a piece of fun foam which I cut down to slightly smaller than my card panel, and I put some double-sided tape on both sides. And once I've done that, I can peel back the release paper and then tape that foam down onto the back of my card panel. And then I'll take the release paper off the other side and tape it down onto my card base. And this is just to provide a little bit of elevation between my card panel and my card base, which I like to do on simple cards. It just adds like an extra level of detail, so not everything is so flat. The entire panel is elevated in a nice and even way. So here I am just kind of lining up that card panel so it's nice and straight and just taping it down right onto the card base there, which is just a standard A2 sized card base in white cardstock. Next it's time to adhere this sentiment, which like I mentioned, I had die cut off camera. For the word part, I want to glue those words onto the shadow, and to do that I'm just dabbing a few little dabs of liquid glue here and there I like to just do like little dabs. You don't really need to add much, just like little tiny dots onto all the little pieces that you want to be stuck down. So I'm making sure that it's all covered with glue, and then I can just stick it right down onto that shadow, and it should just line right up, and it should create like a nice little border around the words, which I think is a really kind of nice way to make sure that those words really pop. Once that's glued together, I can then glue the whole piece down onto my card panel, which I'm just using a little bit more liquid glue for, and then using my craft tweezers to really make sure it's nice and straight and lined up right in the middle of the card, and then sticking it down for quite a long time because it is quite an intricate piece. I really wanted to make sure it was stuck down. So that is it. This is a fairly simple card and a fairly quick video, but I do hope that you enjoyed watching and that you learned a little bit about rainbow blending using the Stencils 360, and I hope that you have a chance to try this technique at home because it's super fun. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you do want to see more of my cards, make sure to head over to my Instagram account, which is linked down in the video description box below, as well as to head over to the Penguin Palace Instagram account because there are a lot more cards and a lot of beautiful inspiration there as well. So thanks for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!